Hello, and welcome to the first ever episode of the Curtain Call podcast. I am your host, Chuck Clay. I am an actor, writer, and director, and a full-time stage enthusiast. Each episode of this podcast will focus on a different theater professional. We'll chat, hear about what inspires them, challenges them, what brought them to the stage, and what keeps them coming back. This week, our guest is Arye Gross, acclaimed star of stage and screen. Arye is probably most recognizable from films such as Soul Man, Tequila Sunrise, The Couch Trip for the Boys, Minority Report, and Grey Gardens. Television credits include The Practice, Friends, 6 Feet Under, and The Riches. He appeared for several seasons on the Ellen DeGeneres sitcom Ellen, and can currently be seen in the recurring role of medical examiner Sidney Perlmutter on ABC's Castle. Aside from his TV and film work, Arye is a dedicated theater professional, consistently returning to the stage where he continues to work and hone his craft. He has appeared in productions at Pasedena Playhouse, The Wallace, The Geffen, South Coast Repertory, Center Theater Group, East West Players, LA Theater Center, Grove Shakespeare Festival, El Teatro Campesino, The Antaeus Company, where he is a member of the ensemble, and Stages Theater Center, where he served as managing artistic director from 2000 to 2003. He also appeared on Broadway in the Donald Margulies play Brooklyn Boy, a co-production of South Coast Repertory and Manhattan Theater Club. When I spoke to Arye, he was finishing a highly successful run of Aaron Posner's Stupid Fucking Bird at the Boston Court Theater in Pasadena. We spoke about that play, and about his love of Chekhov, and much, much more. Arye was a fantastic first guest. We had a great conversation, and I hope you all enjoy it a fraction as much as I did. Now, without further ado, enjoy Curtain Call Podcast Episode 1 with special guest Arye Gross. Arye Gross, thank you so much for joining me.
It's my pleasure. Bye.
So happy to sit down and talk with you. You're, of course, right now performing in Stupid Fucking Bird at the Boston Court Theater in Pasadena. Mm-hmm. So the show is selling very well. It's been fairly successful, so congratulations.
Yeah, it's interesting that there's this, I just saw the Country House a couple of weeks ago at the Geffen, which is Donald Margulies' sort of Anton Mania contribution to this thing that's going on right now. Just Stupid Fucking Bird is a play written by Aaron Posner that he kind of subtitles a sort of adaptation of The Seagull.
Right.
And so there seems to be this thing going on right now.
Well, for folks at home that are listening and maybe are not quite familiar with Chekhov's work, The Seagull, tell us a little bit about that and then what Posner has done here with this adaptation.
Okay, well, so for those of you who really don't know, Anton Chekhov's a playwright and a writer of short stories. In the late 19th century in Russia, and his plays were performed in the Moscow Art Theater, The Seagull being one of the 5 really major plays. And actually, Stanislavski was he played Trigorin.
Oh, really?
In The Seagull. And the Seagull has become a kind of, jewel in the crown of Western culture and contemporary theater. The modern theater. And it was revolutionary in its day because of its structure. It tracks the day-to-day lives of several characters in a house in the country that is owned by a rather successful actress who comes back to the country house to visit with her boyfriend, who's a very successful, very famous writer. And when she comes to visit, her adult son presents a play that he has written, and that is performed by a young woman who lives nearby with whom he's in love. She, in turn, is infatuated with immediately and winds up having a romantic relationship with the writer, the mother's lover. And it also kind of sounds like a soap opera.
Yeah, a little soap opera-ish, sure.
But in the course of this play, Chekhov kind of shows these series of characters who can't seem to find a way to get around their unhappiness. And And it all can seem a little bit petty, except for the fact that the actress's son, the would-be playwright,
sort of the tortured genius sort of...
That's right. Halfway through the play, attempts to kill himself, but he fails at that. But at the end of the play, when years have passed, a series of events occur back at the same house, same group of people are there, and he does shoot himself, and at the end of the play has successfily killed himself. And the play ends rather abruptly.
It's rather bleak. And,
yes. Yeah. So there is no catharsis in the play. There's no leading character in the play, which was radical for the time.
Right.
And there's no catharsis. There's no denouement as things are resolved after the crisis. And it was very radical for its time. Mm-hmm. It's a cherished play among theater artists in particular. Every acting student, starting in high school generally, encounters the play, studies it, works on scenes, and certainly in conservatories and theater programs and universities all over the country, it is constantly studied.
Constantly, yes.
But everybody in the theater knows how it ends.
Right.
And the dilemma for the playwright, Aaron Posner, as I understand it, was how do you do this play, Chekhov's The Seagull today, right, in a way where the ending will have an impact instead of, it literally ends, the last moments of the play, people are talking, Constantine storms off stage, a moment later there's the sound of a gunshot from off stage, a character exits and then comes back in, and depending on the translation you've read, basically says, don't tell his mother, but Konstantin Gavrilovich has just shot himself and he's dead. And that's curtain. And so there's an old joke in the theater, that did you hear about the time that the gun didn't go off? And so the character comes back on and says, Konstantin Gavrilovich has just stabbed himself to death. Ha, ha, ha. And
sound cue fail.
Right, but then there's so just the fact that there is that joke and there's this knowledge of how the play ends takes all the power of the play away, because there's something in the play about these people with these petty gripes and petty dramas and petty disappointments, and that their love lives did not go exactly as they wanted them to, really amounted to nothing except, of course, in the instant where it makes somebody kill themselves. And that's sort of the astonishing thing, one of the astonishing things about this play. And so if you can't feel the impact of Constantine's death at the end of the play, then the play really doesn't work.
Right. So
Aaron Posner was dealing with how do you restore the impact, the end of this play to a contemporary audience, so they can feel the impact of the play, and that's kind of what it is here. And that, in addition, there are all these. He kind of tears the seagull open. Mm-hmm. I actually don't play a character who's in the play.
Right, you're actually like an amalgamation.
That's right. It's a couple of the old geezers in the play. Dorn and Dr. Soren have become Sorn. In Stupid Fucking Bird, and that's who I play.
One of the things that I really found fascinating about the play, and that really, I think, works in this adaptation, is that the playwright has sort of twisted it on its ear, made the play itself the play within the play. And so all of the actors in the play are aware that they're in a play. They're all aware that they're speaking to an audience, often interacting, asking advice.
Yes.
So what is that like? Sort of having that wide open back and forth with the audience. Sometimes you may, depending on the crowd you may not get a response right away. What is that like?
Well, it's interesting for anyone who's listening to this who's spent any time on stage. You may very likely have had the experience while performing of a keen awareness of the feelings, the attitude, or the mood of your fellow human beings who are a mere few feet away from you, sitting in the house. But there is this convention of this invisible fourth wall very often,
right?
And even in plays where there are conventions allowing for asides, there is this kind of feeling sometimes when you're on stage where you want to actually talk to the guy who's sitting in the second row and seems slightly distracted, and ask him how the evening's going for him.
Yeah, what's on your mind? Where are you so deep in thought?
That's right. As well as that, we've all wanted to just, turn to somebody who's got a mild cough as they're working on their candy and say,
twinkle, twinkle,
listen,
twinkle.
just go ahead, just do it quickly.
We're all here. We can hear you.
We're all in the same room. We all hear it.
The longer you take opening it, it's just going to stretch out. Just go ahead and open it.
So Aaron kind of plays with that idea and builds into Stupid Fucking Bird these moments where virtually all of the characters at some point speak to the audience, not necessarily always asking for a response, but now with this idea of directly connecting with particular audience members who are in the house on any given night.
They are there for that performance alone. That's what makes it unique and makes it alive and makes it theatrical.
There is this added challenge or task to the job of the actor, that if you're going to connect with audience members directly and destroy the membrane of the fourth wall, then you also have an obligation to genuinely connect with them and not just put on the appearance of connecting with them.
Right.
And that can be an extraordinarily bracing moment in one's evening's performance. Because if you're going to violate their space they've come, they paid for a ticket, they parked their car, they got a babysitter,
right?
They sat down and they're holding up their end of the bargain. They're sitting in the house and they're being attentive and watching the play. If you're then going to pull back the veil and address them directly, eye to eye, you have to be genuine with them. And I'm not saying that it's possible to do it every time, but that's the goal, right. and be available to what they
get back.
That's correct.
Well, that seems like almost an acting exercise within itself of just how do you be alive in that moment with an audience member that may or may not want to reciprocate the energy or the moment or the situation.
It's very easy to say. It really brings up the difference between knowing what something is and knowing what something is called, because it's really easy to say, be in the moment or be present.
Right.
And you can even tell yourself that you're being present, but nothing will let you know whether you are or not, as much as making eye contact with somebody in the audience you don't know, asking them a question, and then being open to their response or their non-response, or lack of response or negative response, because not everybody's comfortable in the audience being in that position. And you have to deal with it. You can't ignore it.
I love sort of that jarring, bracing effect of having an actor on stage stop and look at you directly and address you directly and wait for a response. It is absolutely shocking. When I was here seeing the show, it happened to me. And I sat there going, what do I say? Do I speak out loud? What do I do? Which is, it's sort of what I think is neat about it is that it does sort of create this unique one-time exchange between human beings, which in the end is, I think, what is so fascinating and unique about theater, as opposed to the other media. Speaking about this play, and even to Chekhov's original, he spoke a lot through the character of Constantine, and now through the character of Conrad, about theater needing a new form. About we must need a new form for theater. The old forms are old, they're hackneyed, they're dying. So speak to me just a little bit about that from your own perspective, not necessarily about the play, but what does that enliven in your mind, this idea of we must have new forms of theater?
Well, I don't really know. I mean,
and that's okay.
When we were rehearsing this, first of all, when the play's written, close to 120 years ago, it was the play in itself was a radical break from the style of theater at the time.
Right.
If we were to discover how the ancient Greeks performed their theater and put that up on a stage, that would seem, I think, like a radically new form.
Right.
So I don't, I think we get used to convention. I am an actor who trained and started working in the late 20th century. And so the style of my era has been naturalism.
Right.
And but I know that, for instance, with what we're trying to do with this, that we're also trying to break away from naturalism. And so there are a number of conventions that are anything but naturalism.
Right.
It's a hard one for me. I wish that I had some idea of what that new, what those new forms of theater might be.
Right.
But my character makes reference to seeing Cirque du
Soleil.
Yeah. Right. But then there's this crazy thing where I a year ago went with my daughters, like crazy about horses right now, and we went to see Odyssey, I think it's called, which one of the creators of Cirque du Soleil has done this thing where it's basically Cirque du Soleil with horses.
Really?
And so there's a lot of trick writing.
Well, that sounds fascinating.
But there's also stuff where they've actually trained the horses, so you will see a scene, and there are no humans visible, but horses wander onto the stage, and and one takes a drink of water, and one lays down, and another comes, and I'm watching these horses play a scene.
Right. That's fascinating.
It is. So, and that's definitely a new form of theater. That's
definitely a new form.
It's really kind of incredible to watch that they've trained the horses to act in a way. It's not like Bill and Coo, where they used to train birds to where like a parrot would wear a trilby and looked like he was carrying a briefcase.
Right.
But have the horses perform actions that give the appearance of being able to watch horses in a natural setting, unobserved environment, interacting with one another.
But see, that's borderline brilliant genius.
It is. It's extremely,
because it's something I would have never thought of. But
right.
But to see somebody have the idea and then to bring it to fruition is incredible.
Okay, but so the thing is, in this play, Connie keeps saying, but it doesn't. But yeah, it's great, fine, it's great, but nothing changes. Is there something you can do in the theater that will actually change things?
Right.
So I mean, maybe that's it. Is there? every now and then, yes, I think there is theater or performance or films for that matter that do change things.
Of course, there's people have been declaring the death of the theater for centuries now. Basically, since it began, people have been declaring that live theater was a thing of the past. And yet we still keep finding ways to bring audiences in to engage them. I think any time that we're thinking, along those ways of, new ideas, trying something new, even going back to classics, like this.
Yeah. Well, there's also this other thing. I mean, I belong to, I'm an ensemble member at the Antias Company,
right,
which is dedicated to working on classical material, and that's great. And hopefully, part of our mission is that we pass this on to new generations of actors and audiences, so that they have an appreciation for these works that have endured the test of time. Whether it's decades or centuries or millennia, but then there are people like I can't remember the guy's name right now, but about improv everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The people who do no pants day on the subways.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
just these sort of like these flash mob things that are they're definitely theatrical.
Yes,
and I'm sure they can annoy. But they also absolutely, amuse and delight and move and inspire people.
Befuddle or anger or, any of the realm of human responses that we want to elicit in the theater.
Yeah.
Are definitely...
So that's a new form. That didn't really happen before the smartphone and
that's true.
YouTube.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because something that I've been thinking about recently is just because having been recently to Disneyland and that sort of thing is how sort of the theme parks are now becoming theatrical innovators and how they're creating environment and how they're creating scent. I was actually just reading something I think in The Guardian the other day that was about theatrical set designers are now starting to take root where
scent
as in the olfactory sense of
sure, right,
which is kind of one of those things that at first you kind of scratch your head and go, is that a thing? Can that be a thing? But of course it can. Why can't it be? If it helps to set up the world of the play, the environment, why not let that add to the experience? And the same with lighting or sound or anything else.
Well, I guess it's getting better. I remember stuff in the 70s that was like presented in smell-o-scope. Smell-o-vision. Scent surround.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Scent surround.
But then, I did parfumery at the Waltz, and they had a sort of display running in the other space of the scent critic from the New York Times curated of perfumes.
Really?
So I think that as radical as it is currently, it's also a thing that is also thousands of years old of using scent because scent is such an emotionally evocative thing.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about. But one of the things your character says in "Stupid Fucking Bird" that
don't you love saying it?
I do. I love the title. Is at one point he says, where did my 40s go? They're talking about looking up and seeing that time has passed. And one of the things you say is, if I could do 27 again, I could really do 27 right.
Yeah.
And that is fascinating to me, just on a human level. So, Ari, if you could go back and have a mulligan on any period of your life, would you take it, and what period of time would it be?
Oh, I think just about any period of my life, I might say I wanted to change something, because I definitely experienced that. I'm not sure how queer it is, and I'm not sure how divine it is, but definitely the dissatisfaction that Martha Graham talks about, it has been with me all my life. So it's hard for me to pin down the area that I would change. You know, I'm always vaguely dissatisfied in the present, and when I can look back, I tend to look back and with a kind of it all sort of gets burnished in my memory as it's kind of a wonderful time. So I guess the only thing I would say is if there was a time I'd like to have another shot at would be like right now, this moment. Except I can't think of anything that I would change right now. But right now, I have enough of a crazy little demon in my brain that says you're whistling past the graveyard. But I'm Lisa, my wife, is an extraordinary person. We have a great, healthy, funny, intelligent, charming, engaged child, Sophia, and I'm doing a show that I want to be doing, that I love. People want to come see it. I mean, I don't know what I would change now. I feel extremely lucky, I have to say, to be doing something that is being appreciated by people, and to be able to appreciate the fact of that as it's happening, rather than finding something to be discontented about with it.
I think that's a great answer. That's a fantastic answer, actually. Well, I don't want to talk about it long because this is a theatrical podcast, but I did grow up watching your films and watching you on television. So I'm going to have what I call a fanboy moment, which is just that, I remember Just One of the Guys was one of my favorite movies at the time. And at that time, I was probably 10, 11 years old. So it was very heady for me to, I believe that might have been one of the first times I saw, boobies.
Sure. Yeah.
But it was right around the time that that you were really kind of breaking into film with that and Soul Man.
That's correct.
So there was that whole period of time that I grew up watching you and really identifying with you as an actor and as a character. So yeah, thanks for that.
Sure.
Yeah, that's my fanboy moment.
I'll tell you something. So Clayton Runner, who played the lead in that movie.
Yes.
He and I spoke a couple of days ago. We've
really?
stayed friends.
Oh, that's fantastic.
The entire time. But John Apicella, who played the bowling coach, was one of the artistic directors of the Antias Company a few years ago. He's stepped aside. We sort of rotate artistic leadership there. I just saw him in The Curse of Oedipus playing Dionysus a couple days ago.
Fantastic.
And we're still very close and very involved, and just kind of reconnected on Facebook with Robert Fieldsteel, who played my counterpart in Just One of the Guys, and Deborah Goodrich, Tony Hudson. Those are all people I've been in touch with recently. And we all had a marvelous time, and I have a great just one of the guys' story.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Please.
It's a few minutes.
Yeah,
Right?
please,
Okay,
by all means.
So Robert Fieldsteel and I were playing Willie and Phil. These two guys, and at first we were supposed to be Trekkies in the original script. But then it was a Columbia movie, and that's
so like got into licensing.
It got into a thing that so sort of at the last moment we got this message saying, okay, so you guys can't be Trekkies, so we've got to come up with something else for you to do, and so they then sent us some sample stuff that was like we were high school kids who were obsessed with horror movies. And, finding eyeballs in our spaghetti and it just, it seemed clever, but it didn't seem to have quite the sort of passionate thing.
Right.
And so Robert and I talked about it and came up with this idea, and I think it was probably really Robert's genius who's like mostly responsible for this. But instead of the idea that we were fans of something, that we actually decided to play that we were aliens, and that we had come to observe this planet, and so we developed an entire sort of Klingon-y sort of language. and a whole kind of cosmology that dictated all the stuff that we did. So, like the way that we wore our hair and stuff on our clothes, all connected to our experience as not just kids who were outsiders, but genuinely aliens from another planet, and doing our best not to be discovered. And it tremendously it helped drive us through this, this teen comedy.
So you guys were playing that underneath everything.
Underneath everything, and we would speak this like gibberish to each other, like not while shooting. I mean, like off, like in the van to and from the set, and people go like, "Geez, you guys cut it out." and
come on, guys, really, this is getting annoying already.
So, John, we shot in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Oh, okay.
And John Apicella and Robert and I, and we'd all done readings and some workshops of the script before it was ever picked up for a film. We flew in together, and John, I think, was reading The Winter's Tale, the Mark Halperin novel. And there was some passage depending on the gate through which you entered a city, east, west, north, or south, dictated what your true purpose in the city was.
Oh, right.
And John sort of speculated that while we were going there to shoot a movie, because the approach, even though we were coming from the west, the approach into the airport in Phoenix was from the east, that actually our purpose was to spread love in the city where we went. And John, very fortunately, had spent some formative years in the Scottsdale and Phoenix area, and somebody loaned him his old car. And so we had a vehicle to get around. And so we would very often go to the set together. So one night, early on in the shooting schedule, we had a night shoot, and it was a scene, it was like a prom. And there was a band, and all the pretty girls, the actresses who were in the movie, who played the pretty popular girls, wound up kind of hanging out with the band that played in the prom scene. and at the end of the night, when we were all going back to the hotel, and I'm talking, it's like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
Along with John and Robert and I, a few of these young women came with us, and we went to breakfast at a 24-hour place, and I think John remarked that, like, here it was, we were on location on a movie, and we were with these, very, very, attractive women, like sort of finding ourselves as the character actors in the movie in this sort of rare sort of circumstance, and that they were kind of like inebriated yahoos. And it's kind of ironic that it turned out it was that way. So they were a little bit offended. So we go back to the hotel where everybody's staying, drop off, and John and Robert and I are talking, and we wonder if we've hurt their feelings, so we decide to make it up to them. And we go to a 7-Eleven, which there were everywhere.
Right, on every other corner.
And we got a couple of bouquets of flowers. And we laid some flowers at their hotel doors as a sort of offering, a peace offering. Yes. So the next day, we're all getting in the van and about to take credit for bringing the flowers, but the conversation we hear from them are, "Did you get flowers in front of your door?" "Yeah, I did too." "You know what? I think it's that guy. I think it was the drummer, the guy from the band."
Oh no!
So we just shut up about it, and for the rest of the movie, we anonymously gave flowers to different people in the cast and crew for the rest of the shoot. And it became like this incredibly elaborate thing of having to get flowers and arranging to sneak, knowing somebody would be leaving their room, and then placing flowers and placing flowers on our doors, and speculating, it's got to be the prop guys who were doing this, etc. And then so there was this whole thing we did about making sure everybody got flowers. And then at the end of the shoot, we went up to a place where we can have old-timey photos taken, right? Dressed in cowboy gear, but and we'd have holsters and rifles, and we'd have bouquets, flowers sticking out of holsters, out of our rifles, coming out of our vests and stuff. And we took a picture and signed it to the company from the Bouquet Bandits. And so that movie had like a whole other thing to it. Anyway.
That's fantastic. So when did you know that this is what you wanted to do? Was there a set moment that you were like, that's it, that's...
There were several kind of aha moments.
Right.
In truth, I really wanted to do it from the time I was a very young child, but had no idea that would. But
exactly,
astronaut, fireman.
Right. Well, it's one of those things that it's not even a thing that you registers in your mind,
or maybe be a man from U.N.C.L.E.
Yeah, where it's like, oh, do people actually do that?
Yeah. Right. And the big moment for me was I went to UC Irvine, and I
studied theater there.
Yes, I don't know. I sort of had a fiction that I was going to take classes that would ultimately lead to going to law school or a degree in political science or something like that. But I wound up very quickly. My entire schedule was just theater, acting, dance classes, etc.
Right.
And I was doing a play directed by Stuart Duckworth, who was on the faculty there, and Rico Ford, Pirandello's Enrico Ford.
Yes.
And Alex Colson was in it, who wound up teaching for a very long time at Orange Coast College. And Lee Shallett, who at the time was the casting director and director of the Conservatory for South Coast Repertory, saw the play. And afterwards, she came to speak to the actors. I would imagine she probably was speaking to everyone, but I thought she was speaking directly and solely to me when she said, if you are interested in professional training, would like to do this professionally, come see me when you finish school about the Conservatory at South Coast Repertory. So I went back to my dorm room that night and wrote my parents a letter and said, okay, I've been scouted by a casting director from a major repertory theater, and I'm going to go into their training program and then become an apprentice at the theater and get my equity card and become an actor. And that's sort of...
That was your...
I just saw it all right then.
It was very clear.
Yeah. And then some months later, at the end of my freshman year, I did get in touch with her, and I auditioned for her for the Conservatory, and she gave me a place, and then told me how much it cost, and I said, I can't do that.
I can't pay you.
Yeah. So she arranged for a significant portion of the tuition to be, offered in scholarship or reduced. And I don't know exactly what the dynamics of everything she did for me, but it wound up being that I had to pay, $200 or something, right. Which I agreed to do. Started the Conservatory and had no money, and at a certain point started getting notes from the office saying, "Really, you do have to get us something.
You do still have to pay us something."
Yeah, even though it's a pittance compared to...
exactly. Just some sign of good faith.
That's right. But I happened to catch the organization at that critical moment where they were completing their last season at the theater on Newport Boulevard and going into the facility on Town Center Drive,
right?
Which has been their home for the past 30
So a very, very critical time of SER's history.
That's right. And I ultimately went in and said, look, I have no money, but I have an idea. And if you hire me here at the theater, then I'll have an income, and then I can pay you what I owe you.
See? Give me a job, I'll make money, and then I can pay you for the tuition.
Yeah. And they shockingly said, okay, I think you can do that.
So what did you do at the theater?
Initially, the first thing was finish the cleaning up of the old space on Newport Boulevard as they were turning it back over. So basically, the theater inside was dismantled.
Right.
And then began work at the new facility and was doing a lot of sweeping and painting and cleaning up after contractors had been working during the day.
Right.
And then as things progressed, working in the shop, building sets, going through the whole inventory of lighting instruments, and working with the beloved Steve Schaefer in tearing everything apart, and kind of learned about that.
So you kind of got almost like an education.
I got this incredible education in how theater works over a 3-year period.
That's fantastic.
While then, and then they, for 2 years, hired me, in addition to that, to touring in the children's theater, educational programs. Mm-hmm. So we'd get up and play, local schools in Orange and LA County. And then we'd finish that by noon or 1 most of the time, and then I'd come back and work at the theater, and then they started putting me into some roles of funny servants and understudying and working as an ASM and doing props and things like that. So really got a little bit of everything. And then after 3 years, they were doing a new play in the Fourth Step Theater. I can't remember what it was called. It's what the Nicholas was originally.
Right.
And I think it was 199 seats or something.
Yeah.
But it was it was a new play called Screwball, and they cast me in it and gave me my equity card.
So that was your
and then they said go work other places and
you did,
and come back and make something of yourself.
And you have actually returned to SCR several times over the years.
Yeah, I really feel like it's my sort of artistic home or hometown anyway.
Well, that's great.
Yeah. It's extraordinary. The work that's come through that theater, things that they've commissioned, and
the Pulitzer winners. Really, it's astounding. Going along with that, you found your way to Broadway, and that was with South Coast Repertory.
Yeah.
What show was that?
That was Brooklyn Boy.
Donald Margulies.
Yeah.
Okay.
And directed by Dan Sullivan.
Okay.
Yeah. And
what was that experience like of just taking a show to Broadway and being there?
Well, it was pretty extraordinary. The play was initially it was a joint commission with South Coast and Manhattan Theater Club.
Right.
So before I was involved, it was always going to start at South Coast and then move to Manhattan Theater Club and the Biltmore on Broadway. And so, somewhat different from doing a show that takes on such an extraordinary life that, we're making the move.
Right, yeah. They're called us up to the big time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But it was Broadway nonetheless.
Yes.
So it was very exciting. I think it's a great play. It's one of my favorite roles I've ever played, and it was an extraordinarily rich experience, and I had that thing, calling, in the days leading up to, our first preview in New York or opening night in New York, calling up a couple of old acting teachers who were still around. Frank Condon, James Wilson, both guys that I had met as a conservatory student at South Coast Rep, and kind of sharing with them, this moment, this journey, decades later.
Right.
And it was quite a wonderful thing. I had a couple of other really extraordinary teachers who, unfortunately, were no longer alive by that time. They certainly, were with me and helped me so much through the years, and are with me, all the time. It doesn't stop. It's intimidating to go to the first day of rehearsal for a show that's going to be on Broadway, and then it's intimidating to move on to the stage at the theater after a couple of weeks of rehearsal onto a Broadway stage, and then having your first preview, and then having your opening night, and then at a certain point it's like, oh yeah, it's like doing a play.
It's like, oh yeah, it's the same thing I've been doing.
So once I got over all this stuff in my head,
the headiness
about how gigantic it was, it was, it's a great house to play. It's a great house to play in, and
it's a great play.
It's a great play. It's a beautiful theater, and damn, I wish Doubt hadn't been so popular. Maybe we would have run longer. So, but it was pretty incredible. I almost feel like embarrassed about, yes, I have played Broadway.
Oh yes, the Great White Way.
Yeah.
Yes.
because I feel like I snuck in the side door. There's so many actors who, slug it out in New York and show up at all of those, those open equity auditions and get cast, and they struggle. I've had it so. I think things are a struggle, but I also know that I've also had it incredibly easy compared to so many.
So speaking of, sort of the feeling like you snuck in through the side door, the intimidation factor, does that ever go away? Or is there always a little bit of it that's always like, I'm still just making it up and I've still got people fooled?
all the time.
Always?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, first rehearsal for this play, we read through and I thought, oh my God, everybody's so good. I have bluffed my way into this.
And now I'm going to be found out.
Yeah, right. So, I don't think everybody has that.
Okay.
But I know a lot of people who do, and I don't know that it really goes away. And if you have it, and that's just how you work, that may just be how one works. And it wouldn't necessarily be better if it did go away.
As an actor, sometimes you do have to struggle getting that first job, getting the next job, getting any job. What advice would you give to somebody that's just starting out and are maybe getting a little frustrated at the grind of constantly auditioning and constantly not getting a call back or not getting the job?
I know a lot of people who were around acting and just trying to get started at the same time I was. Mm-hmm. And not all of them have had acting careers,
right.
But that by no means have they had unhappy or unsuccessful or unproductive or unsatisfying lives.
Right.
and acting's, I love it. It's great. But I'll tell you, I've gone through periods where by any outside metric, it just I've been so successful, and it's amounted to like a part-time job.
Right.
So, I'd say if you're an actor and you're pursuing it and it's not satisfying you, I'm not going to say quit.
Right.
Say, well, just do yourself the favor of finding something else that is satisfying to you, that you can do at the same time, that keeps you from going crazy.
Right.
I think that's why a lot of actors can turn to alcohol or substance abuse or sex addiction and stuff like that, because you're desperately trying to find something that will fulfill the thing that's not getting fulfilled, but the thing you most want to do. But if fine, keep pursuing your acting career. Who knows? You may be like Kathy Houston. Kathy Houston doesn't have a career until her 50s.
Right.
Bob Hoskins came incredibly late to it.
Mm-hmm.
Not that they didn't necessarily know in their teens that this was the only thing they were going to do, and they weren't going to have any career before they made it as an actor. But you have to find something that is satisfying and hopefully that's like positive and healthy to do,
right,
and productive to do while you're working on your acting and working on getting cast and things.
So
stay sane. I guess that would be like, and if it's really horrible for you, there's no shame in walking away.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and that's is not.
And that's exactly. I think that something that you said is very. It touches me in a way, because what you said, if it's not fulfilling your soul, if it's not, in the end feeding your soul and making you happy and making you, want to live another day, then it's a waste of, not necessarily a waste of time, but it's it's a waste of your energy in a way.
Yeah. And I really, the E. Cummings thing, life's not a paragraph and death, I think, is no parentheses. I think we get a shot at this.
Right.
And I don't think there's any reason to choose something that will keep you perpetually unhappy.
Right. Anxious or...
Yeah, or feeling disappointed or discounted.
Right.
So... and if it's really going badly, find something you love to do and then call up a bunch of friends and read a play together.
Remind you of why you loved it in the first place.
Yeah, right.
That's fantastic. Since you do love it so much, you keep coming back to the theater. Can you try to encapsulate a little bit about what it is that you do love about acting, about the theater in particular? Obviously, there is more money to be made on film, on television. Typically, the theater does pay a little less, so...
Sure, yeah, it's not... It's not... I think there are very few people who can actually make a living.
Right.
Not that no one can. Certainly people can.
Have done, but...
Yeah, right. But here, now, it's extremely challenging. But there is, it's what I've always wanted to do. And I feel engaged and alive and challenged. And the being in a play makes me want to work hard. I love working. And it goes back to some impulse from when I was a really little kid, where in a psychological sense, wanted to be. I truly don't think in a narcissistic way, but I wanted to be heard, and I don't feel like I do plays because I want to show off or pretend to be somebody else. I really like to work in a way that I can play a character and express a part of myself that has remained sort of in the shadows. I think that's it. In a way, it's sort of like, this is how I am self-actualizing.
Take me a little bit through your pre-show process. You arrive at the theater. What do you do to prepare for that evening's performance, typically?
I have 2 Heinekens and smoke 4 Marlboro Lights, and then call my agents and leave an angry message on their voicemail. No,
Hey, each his own.
I do like to get to the theater rather early. I do a vocal warm up, and I like Bob Korf's English or speaker's method warm up. So I like to do that. I like to stretch a little bit. If there are other people around the play, if you look in the dressing room, I've got a volleyball and juggling balls and some juggling pins. And if people are up for it, I like to toss a ball before we do the show, and stretch and kind of chat, and then kind of make sure everything is in order that I need technically for the show. That the props are set the right way, and wardrobe is where it should be and easy to change into in the moments where it's got to be done quickly, and then I know it's also good to mix it up every now and then. So if you're the kind of actor who likes to take a shower at 7:00 before every 8:00 curtain, I'd say every now and then don't shower. Don't show up late enough to to give anybody else anxiety, because that sort of breaks the terms of things.
Yes.
Create the possibility for some happy accidents to happen during your performance.
Briefly, because I know that you did spend some time as a managing artistic director of Stages Theater in LA. Yeah. Tell me, and then also as associate artistic director at Antias.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about that experience of sort of being on the administrative side of a theater as opposed to just being an actor coming in, or I say just. But you know what I mean.
I do. Well, at Stages, I'd become involved with Stages, I think in 1981, actually.
Okay.
When it was just Paul Verdier and Sonia, his wife, were just opening the theater, and I was actually I had been assisting Frank Condon, who's a director and teacher that I had met at South Coast Rep. He was directing a show at the Odyssey Theater. I was helping him with the show, and then somebody said, "Do you ever heard of Eugene Ionesco?" And I was a big fan. And they said, "Well, he's here in Los Angeles at this little theater, and they're opening it with 3 plays that he's written for this theater to open."
Wow.
And so I went over there the first time when they were doing Ionesco's Tales, and wound up off and on for the next 20 years having this sort of education in European theater with Paul Verdier, who's the founding artistic director there. I had done several plays there. I had assisted him on some things. We did La Bête at the John Anson Ford with Tony Betamarco and Tony Maggio, and I feel bad about all the people I'll leave out. But in 2000, I did a play, a Feydeau that he had translated, and then he was doing a play by an Argentine playwright called The Bullfight, and he kind of had it. It was such a struggle, and he decided that he was going to close the theater. And he'd also had an offer to direct in Cuba.
Okay.
So I kind of made a deal with him, and I took over, and he left. And we, Don Boughton, a wonderful actor that I had met in those early days of the Odyssey, had done several plays with over the years. Don came in with me as essentially the kind of literary manager but co-artistic director, really. And he and I produced about 30 plays in those 3 years. Did some wonderful stuff. And the extraordinary thing is that when I leapt in to do this, one of my first thoughts was, okay, well, I should just start doing an inventory of what's here and what we might need. And then went through all the lights, and then suddenly realized, I actually know how to break these down when there are instruments that weren't working, so I could repair them, because 20 some odd years earlier, Steve Schaefer at South Coast Repertory taught me how to do this.
It comes full circle.
Oh yeah, and I think that, that was the point where I really realized how much I owed to Steve and Leo Collin, who had been the tech director down there, and David Ems, and particularly Martin Benson, how much he had taught me about physically running a theater.
It's fantastic. Okay, well, we're almost out of time. I do so much appreciate your time and joining us on the podcast. To finish up, I've got what I call the essentials, which are some quick, easy questions that I just to find out more about you. All right, so number 1. Now, with these questions, you can like both, but you always like one more than the other. So, Elvis or the Beatles?
The Beatles.
Okay. Same question, part 2, Beatles or the Stones?
Boy, that's hard, but I think probably Beatles. I love the Stones.
Great. Okay. How do you personally define success?
Not failing. No, I have no idea. One day I hope to have an answer.
Great. If you do, let me know so I can check it off.
That's right.
When you're reading, do you prefer fiction or nonfiction?
I was going to say fiction, but I think I wind up reading more nonfiction. Laundry
day. What do you do to kill time? Read or play video games?
I wish I could say that I just read, as in that I sat down and read. I don't play video games, but I've got to change it. But I spend way too much online.
Oh, just surfing?
Yeah, but the thing is, I'll try and track a news story. For instance, the conflict in Gaza.
Oh yes.
At the moment, and then I will fall down the rabbit hole of of comments until
like. Oh no, not the comments.
The comments.
Oh no.
Yes. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And why am I doing this? But then occasionally somebody will say something, and so I'll select it and Google some reference, and and come out after 2 hours of that, realizing I should have taken the stuff out of the washer right when it ended so it didn't get moldy.
And now it's been sitting there for a couple of hours.
That's right. I'm a little bit of a news junkie, and it's very difficult right now because even facts now are partisan. It's hard,
Oh, yeah, I know.
But what actually happened? Did this happen or did this happen?
It's crazy with how much sort of reporting there is worldwide with cameras everywhere, with cell phones. You'd think it'd be actually easier to get to the reality.
Not so.
But not so. It just adds layers and layers and layers. Yeah. If you could time travel, what historical era or place would you go back to visit? You don't have to stay there, just go back to check it
out. The first thing that comes to my mind is the year before I was born, and try to understand what on earth was going on with my parents.
Okay. What are you watching, reading, listening to right now that's really rocking you, inspiring you, making you think?
Okay, musically, Marvin Country, Marvin Etzioni, singer, songwriter, music producer. Lone Justice was his band.
Yeah, I know Lone Justice.
Maria McKee and Marvin Country is an album of his songs that he's done. Some new and some are songs he's previously released, but recorded with artists like Lucinda Williams and John Doe.
Oh, wow.
And a completely different take on previously
that sounds like
material.
Something that I would be right up my alley, because I love all of those Americana type.
Wow, it is fantastic. But Marvin the Mandolin Man, he is He's great. Yeah,
I will look that up.
What am I reading? Since I've been doing this play, I've been going way back into Chekhov, looking at the play's various translations by different authors, and looking at the letters, which are fantastic.
If you couldn't do this any longer, you had to take on another job, what job would you want to do?
What job would I want to do?
Outside of what you're currently doing.
I think being a mail carrier would be okay.
Really?
Yeah, walking around your neighborhood. I wouldn't want to have to drive the cart. I like the old school thing where they would sort of push the little...
Yeah, the little hand cart.
Yeah, the little hand cart.
And just walk door to door.
Walk door to door, say hi to people. And
that's pleasant.
Yeah. So I think maybe a mail carrier, but like in the 70s.
Right, exactly. Okay. What job would you absolutely not want to do at all?
There are anything other than being an actor or a mailman.
Nothing else. That's it. Those two things.
You know what? I would love to be a really great carpenter, or like a really great
like a craftsman.
Yeah,
making furniture.
Yeah, making furniture in a workshop that had been a barn, and there are skylights, and there's little dust that's visible in the shafts of light that are illuminating
quietly working away in your wood
shop. The rhythmic tap of a mallet on a chisel.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Weirdest prop you've ever used in a play or movie?
A football that had been filled with sand and then paper mache'd and painted with polka dots to represent a phoenix egg. In a production of Man in the Moon.
Fantastic. Weirdest thing you've ever been paid to do and or say?
I spent a 4th of July weekend in a grass skirt and a headdress and a spear dancing in place on a mound as an African witch doctor at Lion Country Safari.
Wow.
In 1978.
That's impressive.
And that is probably the first time I was actually hired to perform.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. That is pretty much...
that kind of takes the cake.
Yeah.
Weirdest thing about you that people don't know?
It's weird.
Okay, I'm ready for it. Lay it on me.
Most people don't know this, but I tell everybody my secrets.
Really?
Yeah. No, I mean it's the stuff. What is the? That's too hard a question.
It's too hard.
I'm sad all the time.
You're just
I'm sad all the time.
Just melancholy.
My brother died 12 years ago, and that's the thing that stays with me all the time.
Really?
Yeah, he was a great guy. This year, I was backstage at a show this year. My brother was 12 years older than me, and he died 12 years ago. And there was a moment this year I was backstage at a show, and I was about to go on stage, and suddenly went, "Oh wow! Today, for the first time in my life, I am older than my brother."
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, that's it's a big thing.
It is.
Yeah. So,
Arye Gross, thank you so much. This has been your curtain call. Please take a bow.
thank you very much. Come again.
Thank you so much. It was
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to Curtain Call Podcast. We can be found online on Facebook at Curtain Call Podcast, on the tweets at Curtain Call Pod, and online www.curtaincallpodcast.com. Thank you, and until then, go see some theater.
That was just telling us that in 10 seconds the room is going to blow up.